Good morning, Azusa Pacific University. Woo! Accountants, we don't get to do that very often. Accounting class is not quite that exciting. In fact, I always get invited to speak to people about money. With a PhD in accounting, as a CPA, that makes some sense. But I want to get invited to do something that's a little more meaningful for once. Like to talk to you about life, to talk to you about purpose. Why don't you ever invite accountants for that? I guess we're just not like that sexy. I guess nobody wants to be an accountant. I want to talk about purpose anyway. By the way, everybody is created equal. We know that. You've been created in the image of God. But not all purposes are created equal. I don't know what attracted you to God. Our God tells us that if we want to brag about something, we should brag about knowing Him. And what is it about knowing Him that we should know? He wants us to know that this is who He is. He's the God of kindness, the God of justice, and the God of righteousness, for in these He delights. So I got a question for you. What was it that attracted you to God? I'm going to bet that a whole lot of you are attracted just like I was because of God's love or His kindness for you. And that's like a starting point about who God is, His kindness, His mercy, His grace. Also, when you come to God, I bet a whole lot of you would like to see some justice. Is that right? You'd like to see some justice. But this third thing, God's righteousness, I feel like this generation, maybe all the way back to my generation, we missed that. But here's the deal. God's ways work. They're right. Okay? And so even though today I don't get to talk to you too much about life and purpose, the things that money can't buy, I do get to talk to you about money, because for everything that money can't buy, well, money can buy everything else. It's kind of a duh, isn't it? Money, you'll end up thinking about it quite a bit in your life. And so I got invited because I do have a PhD in accounting. I'm a CPA, but I also have a great story. I spent 6 years, my wife and I, in graduate school, and our budget called for about half of poverty income. Okay, we'd done some professional careers at this point. We'd been professionals for 3 or 4 years. We were young marrieds. We decided, hey, God was calling us to this more meaningful life. We weren't sure what it was, but we knew that we needed to free up our time a little bit. And so I thought at the time that professors had summers off. That was about 27 years ago. I'm still pursuing that summer off. It hasn't happened yet, okay? But I wanted to free up time. We wanted to free up time to do some things that were more meaningful. And so we did what accountants do. We looked at our budget and said, can we make it? Our goal was to get through graduate school and be worthless. That's an accounting term where your assets, what you own, minus your liabilities, what you owe, is zero. And a lot of you, your dream out there, I'm betting, as students, you wish you could be worthless, right? If you can get out of college and be worthless, a net worth of zero, you've done pretty good. The average college student graduates right now with about $37,000 in debt, okay? Well, our amazing story, we went through graduate school, and not only did we make it, we didn't just survive, we thrived. Our net worth actually doubled. We thought we had a little bit of savings. We thought we'd go to zero. It actually ended up with twice as much savings by the time we graduated 6 years later. And our budget was half of poverty income. Okay. Along the way, by the way, we had 2 children. 2 sons. We have 3 now, so shout out to our youngest, Jake, who is in South Africa right now at APU. If you guys are tuning in from there, I know you said maybe you would last night, so South Africa, if you're there, Jake, Love you, man. Okay, we didn't have Jake in graduate school. We had Benjamin, son of my right hand. He's over working Mexicali right now, but he might have snuck out, might be over East Campus. So shout out to East Campus if you're there. Of course you are, East Campus. But Benjamin, love you, man. And then Josh, who's in New Zealand right now. Okay, so 3 sons. But in graduate school, our family doubled, which is pretty cool, right? And so I got to tell you a couple family stories really quickly. By the way, I know if you're in college right now, you're probably a little embarrassed about people like me. Your parents. I'm just saying, parents, we do like to embarrass our children. In fact, I'm going to probably tell an embarrassing story in just a moment, so Benjamin, watch out. Okay, we do like to embarrass our children a little bit, but you deserve it. You've been embarrassing us for a very long time. Okay, I'm just saying. Here's a great story. So when you have kids, you ever heard, parents who talk like baby talk? It's kind of, well, we didn't do the baby talk thing, but we did turn all of our talk into like super G-rated. Okay, for example, my 2 oldest sons, when they were born, they didn't like fart. We didn't say that word. They didn't even like pass gas. My wife invented this word fluff. Okay, so they would fluff. My wife would say, "Did you fluff?" And so when my oldest son was playing with my second oldest, Josh was playing with Benjamin, a lot of times you'd kind of smell something, right? And think, Benjamin, do we need to change your diaper? And basically, Alyssa, my wife, would say, Benjamin, are you poopy? And Josh, who was having a good time playing with his little brother, didn't want to end the game, would say, it's just me, Mom, I just fluffed. Okay, so we have these code words, which are pretty good until you're like in the supermarket line, right? And so here's Benjamin as a 2-year-old sitting in the little, in the basket, right? And Alyssa's pushing him through. And this little old lady in the line behind them, so Benjamin turns to her and says, "Are you poopy or did you just fluff?" So I'm just saying, kids, you've been embarrassing us for a long time. So, yeah. Okay, why do I bring that up? Well, one of the great things about life, you love your kids. And so the fact that my family doubled during this time period and we still made it, that was just this really cool thing. And so I'm going to tie back into that in just a few minutes. I'm going to talk today about how God's ways work related to wealth. Okay, they work in all facets, but they also specifically related to wealth. And I'm going to talk to you today about 2 fools, okay? Classic fools in the Bible. One you've heard about, I'm sure, the prodigal son. Even if you don't read the Bible, you've probably heard about that guy. Now, by the way, a fool in the Bible isn't a person who's stupid necessarily. They're opposite of a person who's being wise, okay? Now, wise, that's wisdom, or wisdom is knowledge put into practice, okay? So this doesn't mean you don't know something. You can be a fool if you know something, but don't do it, okay? So you've probably heard about the prodigal son, and this guy's a fool. He's the younger brother, okay? And he goes out and asks his dad at one point, I think he's still pretty young, he says, "Hey, divide up the inheritance with me. There's the big brother, there's the little brother, I want my share." And so dad says, "Okay," which kind of sounds spooky to me as a father, but dad did that. I don't know why God made fathers so young. When our first kids, by the way, your parents are just like me. We make all these mistakes because we're new at it. Okay, so understand, that's why grandparents are so cool. It's not their first time around. Okay, but for parents, we're new at it. But anyway, this father shares half the wealth with his son who, what does he do with it? What you might guess, right? He goes out and wastes it in riotous living. He squanders his wealth. Now, everybody recognizes that guy as the classic fool. The classic fool, the person you don't want to be, who ends up with nothing, feeding pigs, and starving to death in a foreign country. Okay, that's not the path you're shooting for. Well, let me tell you, you might have heard a lot of things that you think the Bible says about wealth. I read the whole Bible years ago. I started writing this book, Jesus' Terrible Financial Advice. I wanted to write a book on God's perspective on money, and I knew exactly what I wanted him to say. Yeah, If that sounds wrong to you, it should. He didn't say it. That was the problem. I thought, for example, the Bible said all these things about getting out of debt. Can I give you a little hint here? When you read the wisdom literature, like primarily Proverbs, but there's a few more books in there as well, Proverbs has more to say about wealth than any other book in the Bible. And you know that there is one half of one verse that tells you basically to get out of debt. It says the borrower's slave to the lender. Okay? In mathematical terms, we would say QED. Enough said, I don't want to be a slave. Okay? But that's not the main thing the Bible says about wealth, because there's 1,300 passages on wealth in the Bible. God says all kinds of things about wealth. That wasn't the big thing. In fact, in case you're worried about your student debt, which is worth being worried about, you don't want to be a slave, okay? But let me tell you something about God. God promises you a peace that passes understanding. So you don't have to come to peace with your finances to come to peace. I want you to understand that, okay? God's peace can be with you right now. I was reading, by the way, this week about what's a good life. And I read those classics like Aristotle. And we see it in our in the Declaration of Independence, this pursuit of happiness. God's peace is very different. God doesn't tell us to pursue happiness. God is about contentment. There's a difference in contentment. Contentment is finding your happiness or your joy or your satisfaction right where you're at, regardless of your circumstances. So in case I don't get a chance to come back to that, I'll let you know that the reason Alyssa and I made it through those tough years when we were at half of poverty income is because our contentment was in God. You cannot buy contentment. It simply isn't for sale. Your contentment has got to be in God. I'll tell you, in those poor years, because relatively speaking, I'm pretty rich now. I'm wearing this cool $85 suit. Yeah, okay, okay, I'm still a cheap shopper. I spent too many years in graduate school at half poverty income. But look, I know that back when I had nothing and back when I don't have a good paying job, guess what? I can still only wear one pair of pants at a time. I can only eat 3 meals a day without, oh, wow, you're eating more than 3 meals a day, okay? So if you thought your life was going to be so much better when you got it, here's a little wisdom from an old guy who's not had it and now has some of it. It doesn't matter. I know it feels like it does, and if you think you're unhappy right now, and if life would just be different, right? Maybe you think if I could just graduate. A bunch of you are going to graduate in a few weeks, right? Woo! Yeah, okay, there's one excited senior here, okay. Way to go. Some of you are thinking, hey, if I could just find a job once I graduated, right? Or maybe you're looking, if I could just find that perfect person to share my life with, right? Or if I could just have kids. You keep that up, guess what? You're going to be retired. Don't waste your life waiting for it to be over. Be content now, okay? So live in the moment, but for eternity. So let me come back to this fool and why he was really a fool. Here's what the Proverbs really says about wealth. The number one theme, more verses than anything else in Proverbs, the wisdom-wealth connection is this: do something. Do something. Diligence versus sloth. Do something, you'll have something. Don't, you won't. There you have it. And there's all these word pictures about sloths. I love them, about this person who rotates on their bed like a door on its hinges, doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Even if you don't have a job, go do something. Go serve somebody. Okay. So do something. That's the number one advice. And really, if you think about the prodigal son, what did he do? You might say, I guess he did something. He went and blew all his money. Okay, but he didn't want to keep farming. He was going to go live the life. Okay, so he didn't do something. The second biggest theme in all of the wisdom literature, connecting wisdom to wealth, is do it right. Righteousness versus wickedness. I know if I asked a lot of people, I have asked a lot of people, do you have to cheat to get ahead? A common response I get is, no, but it helps. Well, God says otherwise. He says the righteous person you can knock down 7 times, they keep popping back up. But the wicked person, they might look really good for a moment, but guess what? In an instant, it's over. And they don't pop back up. Proverbs describes the way of the righteous person like this. It says it's like the first gleam of dawn, shining ever brighter until the day comes. So stay on that righteous path. Do it right, okay, as opposed to looking for the easy way out, to cheat somebody, to hoard, to be greedy. Do things right. Righteousness versus wickedness. Again, did the prodigal son do things right? No, it says he squandered his wealth on riotous living. His brother accuses him later when he comes back of that son who wasted all his wealth on prostitutes. Okay? So he didn't do the right thing. So I told you I wanted to tell you about that one fool who's so obvious. We all get that fool when we see them. But I want to call out a completely different type of fool. It's another fool that Jesus mentions, and I'll tell you, it's the fool that looks a whole lot more like me. Okay? This fool, Jesus tells a story about a certain rich man who was a farmer who had a big crop. And the farmer looks at it and says, hey, wow, lucky me, I had a really big crop. What should I do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear down my barns. I'm going to build bigger ones. And then I've got plenty of saved up for the rest of my life. Eat, drink, and be merry. To some of you, that's the American dream. And I looked at that farmer originally and I said, well, Jesus, how is this guy a fool? I mean, he did something. I can tell you, I grew up as a farm kid. Farming's hard work. He did something. And Jesus mentions nothing about him cheating anybody. And if he's a good farmer and if he did it right, it's like, well, Jesus, I thought that's what you were asking us to do. And then it became very clear to me why this guy was a fool. Because I reached that stage a few years ago where things had worked out so well, I could spend the rest of my life doing nothing. And that exactly is what I call the core of a proper fool. See, a proper fool looks really good in the eyes of people, okay? But you could be doing all these things, working hard, saving up, doing the right thing, with your goal to waste the last half of your life instead of the first half. That's the only difference between these two fools. The first one blew the money he didn't have. The second one wanted to blow the money he earned. But both of them wanted to do what? They wanted to stop serving, stop doing something. Jesus says if you want to be great in the kingdom, learn to be the servant of all. And this person who had been given so much, he wanted to spend the rest of his life doing nothing. And that is the same type of fool. He just hid it a lot better. So I want to warn you, if you're in that case, sometimes there's moments that help drive that home clearly to you. 8 years ago, I did a home improvement. Worked my kids hard. We tore the roof off ourselves. We re-sided the house. We did an addition. We got some help on that. But we've been working hard all summer, building this addition, make the house a better place to live. We worked really hard on this, and right at the end, my parents were coming to visit. My sister had flown in from Texas. We were living up in Washington State at the time. They were coming to see me, and I wanted things to look just perfect. I realized out in front of my house was this dumpster. We'd been throwing everything into this dumpster, and I called up Waste Management and said, hey, can you haul away my dumpster? And they said, sure, we'll do that. And then this is like 8 in the morning, about 10, and Waste Management was arriving at 1, I realized, oh my goodness, I'll bet they've got to put like a cover on that thing, one of those big industrial dumpsters, right? I thought, there's no way you can get a cover on my dumpster. I've been throwing everything out into this dumpster, and it's sticking way up higher than it can be. They'll never be able to haul it away. My parents will arrive, big eyesore, I got to get this out of here. So I took matters in my own hands. I climbed up on this dumpster, and dumpsters, industrial, they're pretty high. I'm up on there, and I'm getting all this stuff thrown back in and kind of flattened out, and there's one pallet that's 8 feet long that our siding came in on, and it's at an angle like this, sticking way up out of the dumpster. I'm thinking, oh, do I need to rent a chainsaw or something? So I grab this thing, and I'm just working as hard as I can, trying to get this pallet up out of the dumpster. Now, I'm standing inside the dumpster about this far, okay? So I'm up here about 8 feet, just doing my best military press. Ooh, I can get this, and all of a sudden, guess what? I was stronger than I expected. It snapped. Now, if you're down like this, guys, you've done a little weightlifting maybe, gals, you're pushing as hard as you can. If it snaps, guess what? I flew. Kind of sheared my shins off on the way out over. And on the way down, I realized that I had not planned this. And at the bottom of the dumpster, there's a ladder on its side. And there's also this stair stringer that came from my upstairs deck. Like this, just this jagged edge like this. I'm coming down thinking there's no good way to land this. And there wasn't. I knew about head injury, so I tried to cover my head a little bit, and boom, anyway. And as I'm laying there thinking, okay, this really does not feel right. So I crawled to the door of my house and rang the doorbell. Fortunately, my wife was home. And she rushed me to the emergency room, and you know how hard it is to get attention in the emergency room, right? Here's a tip for you. Just lie down on the cold concrete, just right there in the center, spread eagle, okay? You will get attention. It's a good thing I got attention. My heartbeat was at 23 beats a minute, okay? And apparently there's this little thing in your body called a spleen. I didn't know what a spleen is. I'm an accountant, okay? But apparently you need it, okay? And I guess I fractured it. To fracture it, I guess it's like, how do you fracture an organ? It's like dropping a raw steak, the doctor told me, on the floor. Something's gonna give, it's not gonna be the floor. Okay, so my little car wash my blood, the spleen was fractured, and so anyway, I spent some time in the hospital, and while I was in there, I realized all these things I'd been doing, so what? I mean, when you're laying there in a hospital bed thinking, hey, this could be it, you start asking more important questions, right? Like, have I lived the life that God wanted me to live? You start thinking about the things you're going to miss, and I remember those things. I was thinking, I'm going to miss Alyssa. I'm going to miss holding her. I'm going to miss telling her that I love her. I'm going to miss seeing these 3 sons of mine go from boys to men. I'm going to miss my brothers and sister. I'm going to miss my mom and dad. I'm going to miss my best friend. All these things I'm going to miss, but guess what I was not going to miss? I was not going to miss my home improvement. Didn't even cross my mind. So here's, if I could wrap things up for you guys. Jesus calls this guy a fool because he's stored up all this stuff for himself, and Jesus says, hey, guess what? Your life's going to end. In that guy's particular case, he said, tonight. Then who's going to enjoy the stuff you saved up for yourself? Well, you don't know when your life's going to end. But you do know this. I'm a scientist. This is research. It will end. I know, social scientists, we're not really as precise as some of you other scientists, okay? But your life will end, okay? And you will not take it with you. But there is a way to send it on ahead. And that's the third biggest theme in Proverbs. It's generosity versus stinginess. The Proverbs sum it up like this. It says, one person gives generously and has even more. The stingy person withholds unduly and comes to poverty. I don't know how that works. The math seems backwards in a lot of ways. That actually works here on earth. By the way, Jesus thinks you can test them. They work here just like they do eternally. I've seen it over and over. In my own life, the reason we were able to get through those impoverished years, when you have a generous spirit, you're thankful to God that He's provided for you. You've got enough to share. And instead of your eyes being on yourself and all the things you don't have, when you get your eyes on somebody else and that, praise God, you've given me enough to share, guess what? It's really easy to be content. If, on the other hand, you have a stingy spirit, you could be the richest person in the world. You could be Bill Gates, and this is not a call out on Bill Gates, I don't know him. But you could be the richest person in the world, and you still don't own most of it. And if you have a stingy mindset, you look at all the things you don't own and you're not satisfied, you're not content. And I think that's that big connection between generosity and actually thriving or surviving. But here's the most important thing. You can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. And so if your viewpoint of wealth is right here in this world, you're going to be really disappointed at some point. But if you understand that generosity allows you to get beyond yourself and beyond this world, if you understand that, you can live a truly rich life. Let me finish with what I call the penny parable. Years ago, the first time I spoke here, I gave everybody a penny. And it was fascinating. I want to show people the magic of compound interest. If you double a penny every day for 1 month, you will get about a little over $5 million, a little over $5.5 million, not pennies, $5.5 million, just by doubling 1 penny every month. At more reasonable rates of return, you could take 1 penny and get market rates of return and pass $1 million in about 196 years. You'll pass Bill Gates at 315 years with 1 penny making average rates of return on the market. Some of you are saying, thank you, Dr. Thornton, for that great advice. I wasn't planning on living that long. I didn't think you were. But here's the takeaway for you. Anything invested for eternity is worth more than everything here. So I encourage you, go live a truly rich life. Be content in God.